House juices, to do or not to do? That is the question.
Sure is.
House juices actually hold the most profit for vape shops,
Yeah.
which is why we mention them, and anyone who manufactures their own juice. And sometimes they carry over 600% profit. But the question I have is it really the best position to put oneself in? How do you feel about house juices, John?
I don't think it's, well, of course, I run a premium juice line. So
Yeah.
if I thought that house juice was the best way to go, it would have been the direction that I took. So that right there is an example of part of my opinion on that. But first thing you need to consider with a house juice is the sanitary nature of the environment that it's being produced. That's not to say that because it's a house juice, it's unsanitary. That's not the case at all. But if you're doing a house juice in shop, like, shake and vape, then you're by default not doing the whole controlled laboratory environment that, like, for example, my juice is made in.
And Mount Baker Vapor's juice
Exactly.
is made in.
So first of all, you have to consider the sanitary nature of the environment. Are the people mixing it wearing gloves? Where are they storing their materials? Or is it sitting on the floor in the back, which is something that I have seen at certain places, and things like that. Second of all, in shops like that, you frequently have different people mixing the juice at different times depending on who's on shift.
Right.
So, like, for example, the juices that we make are made in batches that are large enough that any minor variance, any single extra drop that might accidentally go in doesn't adjust the overall composure of the mix itself.
Right.
A lot of juice lines have flavors that take 19 flavor concentrates going into it. And if you're making a tiny 30 ml bottle of that and you get one drop of something wrong, it throws off the entire mixture and it can taste differently. I've heard people coming to me saying they went to a certain shop and it's amazing when Michelle makes it, but it's really not so great whenever Steve makes it. And so you've got that variance among
Steve needs to leave it alone.
Steve's a great guy, but maybe he should sell the mods, So you've got consistency issues as well. And then the most important issue to me with it is that you also might not be compliant with the law the way you're mixing it in-house. Only, not in every way, but insofar as our products are registered with the FDA with exact specific percentages of the ingredients that are going into them. And if you're mixing in shop and you accidentally put, half a milliliter extra of this or, maybe a tenth of a milliliter extra of that, all of a sudden the product you're selling to that customer is technically illegal and not the product that you have registered with the FDA.
Exactly.
So there are a multitude of concerns, and if there's a place with house juice that's great, but just be aware of all the different pitfalls that can happen if that's how you choose to operate.
Exactly. And personally, I feel similarly that house juices aren't the way to go, and mainly just because the FDA classifies any company or shop that's bottling e-juice and labeling it as a manufacturer, not a retailer. Yeah. A lot of shops don't realize that. They'll be like, "Oh, I'm just a retailer." Right. Not if you're bottling and labeling, you're not. And the kicker here is just regardless of the size of the business. They don't care if you're a tiny manufacturer or if you're a Mount Baker Vapor. They could care less. And that's really the point that a large majority of the vape shop owners fail to acknowledge. Right. Whether they produce 10 bottles or 1,000, you're considered a manufacturer.
Exactly.
And the reason that this distinction is so important is because when vape shop owners reach out to the FDA for clarification on major issues, the advice that they're receiving is nearly almost always about a shop that's simply a reseller of a product that's manufactured by someone else. Mm-hmm. But unless they've actually registered as an e-juice manufacturer with the FDA, they have to realize that all the advice from the FDA that they're receiving as a store owner / retailer won't protect them in an enforcement event. And that's the scary part is they're like, "Oh yeah, the FDA told me I'm going to be fined." Let me make sure.
Right.
I know there's a lot of misinformation that's out there.
Absolutely.
And so I was just like, what? They told you you're going to be okay. Oh yeah, I can just, yep, I can keep producing this. There's no problem. All I got to do is throw my label on there and yeah, I'll be fine. There's no need.
Right. And another thing about doing the shake and vape methodology of delivering juice to the customers is that you have to also be forward thinking in this industry, because this industry is so new and is so young. And of course, as we all know, we're under heavy scrutiny from the FDA. So if you're operating that way, shake and vape in shop, one bottle at a time, that's not a sustainable model for what's going to be coming down the pipe in the future. And at best, you might, at best, you're okay right now. And at worst, who knows, 1 month, 2 months, 6 months from now, something might happen that just totally kills how you're operating, and you won't be able to do that anymore. So your best bet is to keep up with everything that's coming down the pipe from the FDA, keep up with regulations, and do your best to make your product as be compliant before the compliance is even in place.
Exactly. You know, and that's one thing is like, they're like, oh, well, the FDA left this open to interpretation because they want us to look at the deeming regs a certain way. Well, conversely, it also allows for states to come in and enforce regulations from the FDA in pretty much any way they see fit, which is why we're seeing bills in nearly every state house that's aiming to bleed the industry dry.
Right.